I was watching Poison 2 last year, and it might be the worst superhero movie I've ever seen. I mean, the genre's getting played out in general, but not much could prepare me for the diarrhea garbage I was subjected to, so now I'm gonna go over it. Thankfully, I didn't watch it in theaters. So the movie starts out with two bums in the cuts, who supposedly love each other. I'm not gonna cap. When this movie started, I thought I was watching the wrong film or something. Like, it's been a minute since I watched the first movie in the series, but I don't remember it ever being this corned out. So after the weirdos are separated, because the female has powers or something, some cop tries to blick her. Does it work? Maybe, probably not. So then it jumps to the present, and our hero Edward has to deal with the fact that the symbiote is like 1/10 as intelligent and 10 times more annoying than he was in the first movie. It looks like Poison didn't get the memo at the end of the first movie, and he's mad he can't just eat people or something. Also, I guess now Edward follows that Cap superhero no pack rule too, because he doesn't even want Poison to eat the ops. And at that point it's like, what is even the reason for this relationship? But yeah, in case you forgot, Edward is still like a journalist, so he goes to talk to the male weirdo from earlier to get his side of the story. He's like guilty of killing his family or something, and wants the world to know it isn't his fault, even though it is, whatever. But after that, he also killed some randos too, so Edward finds out where he hid the packs, and now the government has decided to send him to the Pharaohs, which puts him in his feelings. So back at the crib, Poison is crying about something, so they go to the shop to deal with it, but the shop doesn't have food ready, so instead, they try to have the alien eat some chickens, but he's not going for it, so instead they stop him mugging, and Poison tries to catch a quick meal, but not only does Edward stop him, but the ungrateful woman he saved looks at him like he's the problem. Like what? So then Edward gets a call from his ex-wife, and meets up with her, and finds out she's about to remarry entirely, and gets in his feelings, so you know they have to engineer this conflict out of nowhere, even though they were already broken up in the last movie, and we went through all that there, but whatever. Then when they get back home, Poison acts like a loser as usual, but shows Edward some postcards from the male weirdo, where he talks about Merkin's family, and how the female weirdo is the one who made him feel at home again, and he's mad at Edward for making him look like a problem, and not giving his full side of the story. Can't really blame Edward for how things played out, so Edward pulls up to the prison to tell the weirdo to stop moaning, but then the weirdo keeps talking crazy, so Poison tries to teach him a lesson, but the weirdo bites him, and now has a piece of him, cause that's how that works. So Edward gets all pissed, on account of the fact that Poison has a low IQ waste of space, and they have a big fight, where Poison basically just tosses him around, and leaves the apartment, in search of a new body that appreciates him for him. Like they say there are too many people, but really there are just too many life forms. Then Poison starts terrorizing and possessing people from all over the block. Somewhere else, while they're about to send the weirdo to the next dimension, that piece of Poison's blood that he took ends up becoming its own person, that helps him wet up the facility and escape, so he can go out in the world and catch some more bodies. Back at home, Edward is picking up the pieces from how Poison left his life, and I think we're supposed to get from this little montage that he misses the parasite or something. Also, he learns on the news that the weirdo is not free from prison, and gets concerned that the next song he writes might be about him, cause he's shook. Then that one cop that thinks he murks the female weirdo shows up at Edward's crib and tells him some stuff that I think is supposed to matter to someone. Then Poison goes to a party and acts like a tryhard as always, but for some reason, the crowd was feeling the shit he'd say, like I would've thought I'd have a better chance joining the KKK. But Poison's all depressed, cause I guess victory is hollow when that one nigga you've been hoeing and disrespecting for like half a movie straight isn't there with you. Then Edward comes across a love note between the male and female weirdos, which I guess means the female weirdo is still out there somewhere, and it causes the cops to get PTSD, remembering the nonsense he used to go through with her. Then the male weirdo goes to some store just to violate some guy for a quick Google search. Like, why do people like this have to exist? So it turns out the female is alive and is being kept at some super facility, and the woman there starts talking wild to the female, but then the male just comes out of nowhere and gets her out of the way. With the weirdo reunion done, the male introduces the female to Bloodbath, and they break the cage. Like, I know these are the bad guys or whatever, but I think we're supposed to feel genuinely happy about them getting reunited. With Bloodbath, they escape and start pressing a bunch of cops and stuff, but during the fight, the female weirdo does her power, which is screaming, and it puts Bloodbath in his feelings, because you know he's like Poison, and it's a really uncomfortable scene all around. Then Poison comes back to the shop from earlier, because he's hungry or something. Meanwhile, the cop calls Edward, because he's trying to understand what's going on. So Edward calls his ex-wife to deal with this problem, because he can't really tell them that some alien lives in both him and the weirdo for some reason. Then the ex and her new guy go to Poison, who's now possessing the body of the shop owner, talking as crazy as possible to them, but then they get him to chill out and do what he's supposed to, and Poison merges with the ex-wife, who then gives the disease back to Edward. On to Team Weirdo, they've assembled behind a church because they've each marked out the op he intends to face. First, Bloodbath snatches up that one cop, then the female takes the ex-wife and has her new man tell Edward to get down to the church, where it looks like they're doing some weirdo wedding, and as the scene goes on, my hatred goes stronger and stronger. So Edward shows up with Poison to fight the ops, but Poison immediately pusses out when he sees that his son is actually red, which means he's more powerful than normal. But then Edward gets him to come out again by offering him the packs of all the op humans, so the battle starts with the female screaming again, but then Bloodbath gets her out of the way, which makes the male upset. I guess it shows that the useless alliance is already falling apart. Then there's some fighting between Poison and Bloodbath, and right before the female gets to roll up a cop blunt, Bloodbath stops the plot just to tell her to keep it down. So Bloodbath kills the priest they hired for some more HP. Also again, the female's about to murk the cop, but then the ex-wife's husband starts burning Bloodbath, and Bloodbath has to catch a new body, but Poison stops him, and the bells ring, which causes the parasites to separate for some time, and it's Edward versus the weirdo, who's still crying about the fact that Edward didn't tell his dumb side of the story, whatever that means. And right when it looks like Weirdo's about to choke Edward out, the parasites come back out. After some more fighting, eventually, Bloodbath pulls out the ex-wife and tries to murk her in front of him, but apparently, the female has a conscience or something and thinks that's going too far. So Bloodbath tries to put her away, which makes the male weirdo mad, and Poison and Edward use the power of friendship to get out of the rocks they were trapped under and go to save the ex-wife, but in the process, they almost get taken out of the game by Bloodbath, and the female weirdo uses her scream to blow up the bell, which is enough to turn Bloodbath into a pack, which Poison then eats. After that, Poison finally puts the mill in his blunt. Like, I've been waiting for that shit to burn all movie. So Edward, the ex-wife, and the new man all escape, while the police roll through, but the cop was left behind, and it looks like he's still in this dimension, and is going through it. After all that, Edward is in the park talking to the Poison, and they all go to the beach, and decide to become superheroes or something, and that's the movie. Oh yeah, and after that, there's a post-credit scene, because that new Spider-Guy movie kind of ties into all this, and Edward and Poison are brought to a new dimension, but not like in a pack way, where they see Spider-Guy himself on TV, and Poison is in his feelings about it for some reason. Don't worry though, they don't actually ever interact, and there's not even a good reason for him to even have a useless comment, because there's not even a good reason for them to even know each other in the first place. Apparently the thing is, every Poison across the multiverse shares memories across them, so they all know about that one thing that happened in the third movie of a certain series from like 15 years ago, but like, this fan service is dumb and unappreciated. The movie itself is actually abysmal. Like, I haven't watched Morbius or any of the other super trash superhero movies as of making this video, but out of all the cape shit I've seen, this has to be the worst. Not only is it not remotely funny in the slightest, but it's also not interesting. The main villain isn't a compelling serial killer or anything, he's just an annoying psycho, who's now too old to be acting like this. His dumbass wife is annoying too. Like, I think she's supposed to be somewhat more sympathetic, but at the end of the day, you still kidnap some guy's wife to bait him to showing up so your husband can murk him. Like, why are you acting so surprised when she's about to get murked too? Then there's a problem with Poison himself. It's been a minute since I watched the first movie. I knew it wasn't all serious, like there were some hee-hees and ha-has, but last time I checked, Poison wasn't this much of a try-hard joke of a character. Also, this has nothing to do with the movie itself, but Edward's actor lets his accent slip a little too much. Like, it's clear the man isn't from the continent,